Hey guys, how's it going? This is my first time doing one of these, so I'm pretty excited. After going over the legal aspects of, teacher evaluation, looking at all the articles, this is what we kind of came up with. The first article that we looked at was basically just an overview of teacher evaluation. There's a lot of momentum right now to reform teacher evaluation and to make sure evaluations are actually geared towards teachers and students. Replacing underperforming teachers is still kind of an underline that people are trying to get across, and some people don't feel like that's right. Another thing is using evaluations to actually improve teacher practices. That's kind of the overlying goal is, are we actually getting teachers better by doing evaluations? And then last but not least is providing standards, actual set standards for evaluation so that people know what the standards are whenever they go out to evaluate people. The next one is kind of just an issue overview as well. It really talks about how you have your top performing teachers and then kind of your worst achieving teachers and how you evaluate both. They're talking about reevaluating and revamping the evaluation process to where teachers can learn about their strengths and weaknesses. Also, though, this does kind of have the underlying lining effect as well of this helps you get rid of bad teachers quickly and efficiently. So hopefully in this revamping process, you'll be able to see kind of right away what a teacher's strengths and weaknesses are and what you need to improve and whether or not they can actually do that. And then a lot of people are going to this value added model, but a lot of teachers are still worried about this because it is new and it is hard to kind of base off of. There's still a lot of bias in it, and so teachers are still worried about that. The next one, they talked about kind of the court aspect of teacher evaluations. They really talked about the procedural and substantive complaints that have happened. Okay, that with all these new systems being put into place, teachers are having to adjust. Every year, they could have a different evaluation process, and some teachers are finding that hard and finding that maybe that's not appropriate. Another thing is that they're contesting their grading components, which really they should. I mean, a lot of teachers go through bias, and there is a lot of bias and there is a lot of gray area in this evaluation process. And this has also led to bigger matters like should evaluations be actually tied to tenure and other things like that. And the leading states in this where teachers have actually gone to court are Florida and Louisiana, New York, Texas, and some others. The teacher evaluation measures and systems. One thing I found very uh, gratifying, I guess, is the fact that they said the teacher is the most important factor in education and in student learning. And I completely agree. And I think that's kind of an overlying theme of this is how can we make teachers better and more efficient without the stress of them feeling that evaluations are out to get them. Components of this article actually gave components of a successful teacher, and the first one is creating linked and integrated systems. So actually having systems that are linked to standards and linked to school competencies and what the school is trying to achieve, and linking your evaluation to that. The other one is using a validated evaluation method, so something that actually has data that can be valid and substantial to teachers. And then the last one is establishing that credibility where teachers are trusting the process and not feeling that people are out to get them. You know, that your principal is actually there to help you become a better teacher instead of critique you and try to get rid of you. At our school, we have a negotiated agreement. I looked it up. In the negotiated agreement, they say that to evaluate a teacher, you have to have at least 3 classroom visits of 20 minutes or more. I've found this extremely difficult for administrators. I mean, 20 minutes 3 times. We have 120 teachers, and that's a lot of minutes. I doubt you see this in most classrooms, and so there is a kind of gray area here that if an administrator is not actually going out and doing this, it's very hard to actually evaluate a teacher. Uh, then they give a mark of exemplary or unsatisfactory. And if you mark unsatisfactory or exemplary, you have to support this by written statements or documentation. So at least if a person is marking unsatisfactory, they have to actually show why they mark that. That way, whenever we come to this in process, teachers and administrators can both be on the same page. And during this process, educators actually evaluate themselves, which I find to be very beneficial because it kind of does a little self-actualization, and teachers can kind of see their faults, go over their strengths, and then they get together with their admin at the end of the year and they both present kind of their evaluations. So the teacher presents their self-evaluation, the administrator presents what they have seen, and that way they can either discuss the differences, see the similarities, and have an actual discussion about it. For if teachers disagree with their evaluation, I talk to our head of personnel. That's the first step. Is they're supposed to go directly to our head of personnel. They're not supposed to go to our head principal, anything like that. Directly to the head of personnel, and he will actually make a note of it. And then they're to file an appeal with the Board of Education if this evaluation is leading to a non-tenure or non-renewal. And it has to be a written request within 10 days of their final evaluation. And then the board will put it on their agenda, and the teacher can actually go and respond to the board. And then the board makes it a final decision on whether or not they're going to accept the decision for non-renewal or not. For my case study, I talked to Brian Howard. He's an assistant principal for us this year and very new to high school, but he's been a head principal for 17 years. And he gave me a real world example that he went through, which was a teacher was up for a non-renewal due to general poor performance that they had in multiple evaluations. They went through the 3 evaluations for 20 minutes. However, the administrator that was supposed to be conducting the evaluations did not actually follow pre-conference rules. And one of those rules was giving an actual timeline for a plan of improvement. And so they gave the teacher a plan of improvement. They just didn't tell her the timeline that this needed to be done by. And so she went to the Board of Education, and actually the district granted her a 3rd year. But after, the process of having to go through that and then having this plan of improvement that's going to be put upon her, she decided to resign. In conclusion, I think our profession is so hard to evaluate. I do. I think it is so hard to define what is a beneficial teacher, what is a good teacher, because I think they come in many different shapes and sizes. And what this does is this leads to a constant change in evaluation, which makes it much more stressful on teachers and administration. I think that if you ask them what's one of the hardest things you have to do as an administrator, it might be to go out and evaluate teachers. And I would say if you ask a teacher what's one of the most stressful things, it might be an evaluation. And so there clearly needs to be some changes to this in the future. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. And that's all I got.